Hey there, fellow travelers, and welcome back to Wanderlust and Wallets, the new title of this podcast series, where we're all about traveling smart and see more, spend less. I'm your host, Bryce Coffee. Super excited to have you here on episode 2. If you caught up with our first episode, you already know where we're all about helping you make sure you make the most out of your travel adventures without breaking the bank. Today's topic is essentially about creating the perfect travel itinerary. Whether you're a meticulous planner or more like me, you're a go with the flow type of traveler, I've got some tips that will help you make your trip as smooth as possible and unforgettable. So let's dive into things. First and foremost, why even bother with an itinerary? Some of you may think, I don't want to be restricted to a schedule, but trust me, having at least a rough plan will save you time, money, and stress. A good itinerary doesn't have to be a rigid one, but it should give you an idea or a roadmap of how to make the most of each destination. So start by a must-see list that you're going to create, like tourist traps, restaurants, so on and so forth. So whether it's like the Eiffel Tower in Paris, a sunset in Santorini, Machu Picchu in Peru, your itinerary should be all around those key highlights. Well, should be listing those key highlights. Making sure like you got to go to those places. You got to write them down, because if you don't write them down, unless if you really are into them, you might not be able to make it on your trip. So prioritize your those areas so that you're not heartbroken and miss them. For example, when I visited Spain, my non-negotiable was going to see the Bernabeu, where the soccer team Real Madrid plays, and I wanted to go see the Sagrada Familia, and I wanted to go to at least one club in Ibiza, and thank God I was able to. I was able to go, but I was able to weave that into my plan, because you got to be able to make sure things flow and you don't waste time traveling from one destination to another. So here's a pro tip that I would like to leave you here. Make sure you integrate those must-sees, but also weave that into those things you don't expect. Like maybe you wanted to see a show, the flamenco show in the evening, and you just showed up, or you wanted to sit at a quiet beach seeing a sunset that you couldn't have foreseen, or try a local food market. We'll try and weave those. Visit the local food market by the Eiffel Tower. Try to walk a few blocks south of the Sagrada Familia and go to a beach, or rent a car and go to Costa Brava, for example. So, just try, what I'm trying to say is try and balance out your trips with major sites and with lesser known spots. If you're going to hit a major tourist trap, spot like a Louvre, plan some downtime and just sit at a cafe. You're not going to plan that out in advance, like, oh, this specific cafe at this specific time, or park, or so on and so forth. It's all about pacing. Once you have seen your must-sees, I'd map them out, literally. Google Map them. Google Maps has one of the best tools, and as well as Google Earth, to actually pinpoint exactly where you're going, how much distance you're covering, and so on and so forth. 20 years ago, there's no way you could do all that type of stuff. Now technology has made it so much easy. Or you want to organize your itinerary by specific spots, like whether it be neighborhoods. You want to pinpoint those areas around that neighborhood, or so on. You don't want to be jumping around sporadically from one spot to the other. Like if you're in New York, you want to visit Lower Manhattan, the Statue of Liberty, while you're in the same day, versus jumping all the way to Yankee Stadium in the Bronx, or going to the Hamptons, or surfing Long Island, or even going as silly, as ridiculous as going up to the Adirondacks. It's just not. It doesn't make any sense. So try and make sure your proximity of destinations is within reason and within time frame. And remember, you're on vacation. Leave room for flexibility. Don't pack your days with a bunch of things, and try not to do it too tightly. Lately, I've been guilty of trying to plan a trip to go to Spain, but for a week. But the problem is you're on the plane for essentially 2 of those days, so you're just there for 5 days. Do you really want to be traveling transcontinentally just for 5 days? Might as well, you gotta settle for choosing a closer destination in those type of cases, which I did. Keep that in mind. You do also the other thing is you want to hear about cool local events. Things are going to happen like concerts, festivals, you name it. Discover might help you discover places that you weren't on your radar originally, like a Bangaroo in I think Tennessee, if I'm not mistaken. I would have not planned out going to that area if it weren't for that festival, or for example, Tomorrowland. I didn't know was in Boom, Belgium. So if I'm ever in like Flanders, or if I'm in Brussels, for example, keep that in mind. Go to those areas in July, and try and weave that going to that festival during that time. Spontaneous ads, how do you say spontaneous actions, I should say. Apologies for the butchering of it. Adds richness to your travels, but you make sure you don't want to overdo it. Of course, we can't forget about budget, right? As I mentioned in the previous episode, it's about budgeting, planning to make sure that you factor in a mix of free, low-cost activities, as well as things that you really, non-negotiables, like those tourist traps or things like Sagrada Familia, where they're pricey. Most cities have actually, like for example, in Europe, they have free walking tours or museums with free admissions. So try and plan that accordingly within your itinerary. Plan for at least a couple of these like budget-friendly options, so that way you don't break the bank. Many cities, for example, just wandering through local neighborhoods, markets, things that you wouldn't have never thought of unless you were really in there, would be honestly your best result, and oftentimes that will happen. So just keep that in mind as well. And let's talk about like for meals, like food. All of us love it. Many of us love it. I'm no guilty. I'm not. I'm guilty of it myself. I'm a foodie. You want to try different things. You want things that you're not able to have back at home. Well, for everything, you got to consider every meal can be an expense, and it can rise up pretty fast. A good strategy is to mix it up, though. Not everything that's good is necessarily expensive. I repeat, not everything that tastes good or is amazing is expensive. Mix it up. Have some meals that are local. Pick up groceries if you need to. I sometimes want to do like a picnic at a park somewhere in Europe. You just never know. I just go to the local market, and you get a chance to mingle with locals as well. That's an awesome experience. Also, just like make sure not to like see, oh, what is the best restaurant, or splurge on like Michelin star restaurants. Like there's a time and place for those. Don't get me wrong. I would love to do that, but don't make that every single night, so to speak, or try not to overdo it. So another thing, and lastly, but one of the most important things, is use travel apps and tools. Why I say this? Because technology's on your side, and it's here to help you organize and plan accordingly. It wasn't like 40 years ago where you have to go through a travel agent and do all this type of investment, get all these atlases and all that stuff. We aren't in that world anymore. Whether it's like Rome to Rio website, or figuring out your transportation options, Google Tips, itinerary management, making sure you have the right apps for transportation as well as hotel, Airbnb, you name it. Just finding experiences or apps. Like for example, I'm going to Vegas in a couple weeks. There's an app that allows you to get invited and go into different pools for different resorts that you're not a guest of. So things like that, or discotheque, and a discotheque event app that I have for Vegas. It allows you to skip the lines. I just learned that from TikTok actually. So I used actually TikTok for something good, which just those are the things that you got to keep in mind before you go. You can't just like leave and not be sure what's going to go on. So just keep that in mind, but don't over stress about it too. There's a balance to it. So don't stress. Travel is about experience, and you get experience as you do more traveling. And it's been proven, like I said, to get you smarter. It's been proven by scientists. Look it up. So, but don't let the itinerary guide control you, but at the same time, have it there on your side, just in case if you're not sure, or if you need some sort of guidance. If you found this episode helpful, be sure to subscribe and leave a review, and like this video if you'd like as well. I'd love to hear your feedback, and I'd like to know more what you'd like me to cover. What's your travel bucket list, and how do you plan to travel? Thanks for tuning in to Wanderlust and Wallets. Until next time, safe travels.